Hi, yogis. Happy Sunday. I want to start by thanking those of you who have reached out with either questions or comments about what it looks like to be trying on these practices. We've covered a lot of content thus far in the last several weeks of Sunday Sutras, and it really fills my heart with joy to have students coming to me with questions, because it demonstrates that you're actually plugging this wisdom teaching into your daily life. So that brings me so much joy, and I just want to say thank you for those questions, and to let you know that today in our discussion we will be addressing several questions that I've received from students from the past few weeks. So in the past few sessions, we've talked a lot about habits, identifying habits that we want to upgrade or that could use an upgrade, and then finding the steps to replacing those habits with more supportive practices. So that's what yoga really is. Yoga is the ability to do something today that was impossible yesterday. So with that in mind, there are some obstacles, and what we focus on expands. So today we're not going to focus on the obstacles, but we will address some questions and work towards solution for some of these obstacles. So one of the questions or comments, I suppose, that I got after the last sutras session on creating tapas, or new practices, right? So a tapas is the discipline that's required to integrate a new behavior into our life. And one of my students said, I don't have any tapas that I want to try, or like I don't have anything in my life that I really feel serious about changing. And I was like, right on, then you're good right now. So if we don't have the desire to change a habit or create a new practice in our life, then that lack of enthusiasm means that the practice won't stick anyway. So if you currently don't have something that you feel serious about changing, then no problem. Utilize these tools when a time comes for you to create change. So it makes me think about when, for a long time, I knew that the way that I was feeding myself was not sustainable. I knew that I consumed sugar all day long, every day, and that it wasn't good for my body. However, it wasn't until this past year that I actually had the desire to change, and that's when I was able to implement a tapas, a new practice, a new behavior around how I consume sugar. So my invitation, my encouragement to you is not to try to change things just to change things, or because you know that other people have opinions about it, or that you know intellectually like it's not good to eat sugar. So I would encourage you to use these tools on behaviors that you feel inspired to change, because basically you've suffered enough. That's what yoga tells us. Like, we're ready to change when our amount of suffering has hit our threshold. So we're no longer willing to continue living the way that we're living, because the suffering is beyond our capacity to withstand, and that's when we change. So when I was experiencing chronic headaches and chronic fatigue and feeling like I just lacked energy and wasn't fully present in my body, then I knew, okay, I've had enough of this, and I'm ready to change how I eat, how I feed my body, so that I can have more sustainable energy. And that motivation is what drove me to actually create change. So I hope that is helpful in giving you permission to maybe not want to change a behavior. Like right now, like I drink coffee every morning. I drink it in a way that uplifts me more than I used to, but I'm not ready to give up coffee because I don't want to. And so apparently the suffering isn't enough for me yet, and that's okay. So another question that I got from a student around tapas was that this student feels like she is overwhelmed. Her plate is so full. She has a busy life, different jobs, relationships. So her life is full. And she's like, how do I implement a tapas, a new behavior, a new practice, when my days are already just completely saturated? And my response to her was that her tapas would be reductionism. So a new behavior is only a tapas if it is contrary to what we're doing at the moment. So if what you're doing at the moment is filling your day to the brim, then adding something else onto that wouldn't be a tapas because it's not new behavior. It's not contrary to what you're already doing. So implementing the opposite of that, which would be to reduce what's happening in your life, that would be your tapas. So, for instance, I suggested a sacred time in the week that this student carves out, like every Wednesday morning, that is my time that I don't schedule anything, so that I have a reduced schedule and I have some white space in my life to connect and reflect, and whatever it is that would fill my soul up, that would be the tapas. So the tapas would be to schedule less. Another thing that you can do is to implement a tapas along the lines of pausing or giving yourself permission to ask for time before answering a request or before adding, hey Victoria, before adding something to your plate. So if you, like me and like this student, find that your days are really busy and your plate is really full, then when someone asks something of you or an opportunity arises, the tapas could be the pause. That instead of answering yes or no to opportunities, doors that open right away, the new practice could be, I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. Can I sleep on that and get back to you tomorrow, right? So just implementing a new behavior isn't adding something to your plate. It's changing the way that you approach what you're already doing so that you can have more sustainable joy and less suffering. So if your plate is full and that's causing you to be stressed and not experience a lightness and enjoyment of your day, then adding something isn't going to support new contrary action aimed at refinement. So my suggestion would be to practice reductionism. Good morning. And in doing that, there's a lot of different approaches. So sit and reflect. How can I take a new practice, a new behavior that isn't going to add something to what I'm doing, but in fact is going to help me lighten my load, lighten what I'm obligated to take care of, lighten the pace, slow the pace down so it's more sustainable. And another conversation that I had with my students around these 3 steps that we discussed last week of creating change, which is called Kriya Yoga, this yoga of action that moves us in the direction of our goals one step at a time, is what if I don't do it? You know, I just get frustrated because I set this goal or I set this new practice that I want to do, and then I drop the ball and I get really disappointed. So it reminded me that one of the most empowering permissions, I suppose, that my sutras teacher, Robert, gave us all is that he explained the 80-20 rule in regards to your new practice. So basically, 80% of the time, do your practice. And then 20% of the time, relax. Let yourself off the hook. So if our goal is to create change and to move in the direction of this new practice, this new behavior, then 80% of the time, stick to it, commit, and know that 20% of the time, life happens. And that's okay. So we have a more realistic goal and give ourselves permission to be a work in progress, and to know that 80% of the time I'm doing my practice, I'm still moving in the direction of my goal. So if you're trying to accomplish 110% all the time, Robert says, how's that working for you? How's that 110% working for you? Is it sustainable? And if it's not, if you feel discouraged, then perhaps your perspective or your expectation of yourself can be adjusted. So when we set a realistic expectation, then we feel filled up and inspired to continue working forward. When we feel like we're failing, then we're more likely to give up. So 80-20 rule, let that encourage you. And if you find, like, there's been times where I've implemented a new tapas, a new practice, and I do it like 20% of the time and 80% of the time I don't. What that says is the practice doesn't fit and I need a new practice. Most often, when I've implemented a new behavior and then I've only executed it like 20% of the time, what it means to me is, if you envision a staircase, because we're practicing this changing of our behavior one step at a time, the way I envision that is, if I'm doing the practice only 20% of the time, I've tried to jump the staircase. I've tried to jump too many steps at once, and in doing so, I didn't set myself up for success. So when I recognize, okay, this practice isn't sticking, instead of feeling discouraged, like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? It tells me, let me look at my practice, which is the practice of svadhyaya, the reflection, right? Let me reflect on this practice, and how can I choose another behavior that still moves me in the direction of my goal with more success. So if your expectation or your goal, your standard is 80% of the time do your practice, 20% life happens, and if you're finding that you're not able to execute that 80%, reevaluate the practice. And hey, Nicole, reevaluate the practice and give yourself permission to change the practice. You have the right to change your mind. You have the right to change your practice at any time, so it's more sustainable for you. So what we focus on expands. That's what yoga tells us. It teaches us that whatever we set our mind on is going to get bigger. And unfortunately, sometimes what we do is we focus in on everything standing in our way of the goal. So for me, hey Natalie, one of the practices that I tend to struggle with creating consistency around and turning into samskara is waking up earlier in the morning. So I can focus on the obstacles to that goal. I can focus on how tired I feel. I can focus on all the times that I don't wake up. I can get stuck in the story and the limiting belief that I can't do this. I'm too tired. I don't get enough sleep, right? I can focus, good morning. I can focus on the things that are standing in my way, or I can focus on solution, and I can focus on the future where this practice has landed, has been implemented with ease. So what does that look like? What does it look like to focus on solution? Well, for one, you can utilize visualization. You can visualize the qualities or something that represents the qualities that you want to embody, and spend 2 minutes a day just visualizing those qualities and staying connected. So here's an example. If you want to have the courage to execute moving into a new profession, or you have an interview coming up, or you want to put yourself out in the world in a new way. You want to put resumes out or market yourself in a new way, right? So you have this idea, this goal of pursuing a new profession or your same profession in a new way. And you want confidence and courage, and you want to feel big and powerful as you step out in this new way. Then you can visualize an elephant. You can meditate on the qualities of an elephant, the resilience, how an elephant stands firm and is confident and strong and able to move through obstacles. So you can spend 2 minutes a day meditating on the qualities of an elephant and start to embody those qualities. You can even, one of my favorite lines from my teacher, I feel like I say that about everything, but my teacher reminds me all the time, remember the future. So I can spend 2 minutes a day meditating on the qualities of an elephant, and or I can spend 2 minutes a day visualizing what it will feel like, what it will look like, what it will be like when I execute that goal or when I'm living in the reality of this new practice. So instead of feeling discouraged anytime I don't wake up at the time and get out of bed when I set my mind up to, when I find that friction, that discouragement, instead I can focus on visualizing what will my day look like when I am out of bed at 6 a.m. What will it be like to sit at the breakfast table and enjoy my coffee and do my reading and practice my pranayama without being rushed? What will that feel like? What kind of interactions would I have in the morning with my family? What tone would that set for the rest of my day? How would I show up for my students? And I get to visualize in rich detail this future me, this future reality where I wake up with ease at 6 in the morning and I get out of my bed and I stretch my body and I enjoy my coffee and I feel the slow pace of the morning and I get to indulge in that. So that can continue to inspire me. And as I meditate on that new reality, it becomes more and more real. And I infuse myself with Shraddha, which is confidence or faith, that this reality that I'm envisioning will come to be. That I actually believe that this is possible. That I believe that I'm worthy of these things. That I believe that I'm capable of these things. Because for me, one of the things that I feel continues to bring me up against a wall or roadblocks in practices that I'm working to implement, because let me tell you, this requires a lot of work for me, and there's a lot of practices that I've worked to implement that I have found frustrating, and I've found a lot of friction and challenge. And honestly, one of the limiting beliefs that I can see is a roadblock for me is some of these things I, on some level, don't believe that I deserve to be fully happy and at ease, that I don't deserve to have a restful morning, that for some reason there's a sense inside me of vasana, which is an imprint on your psyche. So some deeply held belief that maybe I'm not worthy of feeling energized and light in my body and moving through the day with ease in a sattvic sustainable pace. And so these practices of visualizing, meditating on the strength of an elephant and visualizing this future version of myself that loves herself enough to wake up early, that experiences the freedom of a relaxed morning, that experiences the confidence in the way that I can show up when I've set myself up for success, because the tone of my morning set the tone of my day. And when I visualize those things, then more and more they manifest within me. And I start to undo this limiting belief by replacing it with affirming myself, building Shraddha, confidence, practicing smriti, which is memory. So I'm remembering the future by visualizing this future reality that's easeful and freeing. And I can remember the past. So I can remember, what does it feel like when I rush myself? What does it feel like when I wake up with hardly any time in the morning and I skip breakfast and I go throughout my day? What does that feel like? How has that supported me? Nicole, thank you so much for sharing. So what does that feel like? And how in the past, I can remember my past successes. I can remember how it felt like a huge mountain to work towards removing this obsession with sugar, this addiction that I had with sugar. It felt like this enormous mountain, this just almost unimaginable challenge to change my relationship with food in that way. And yet I was able to propel myself with confidence and courage in the direction of my dreams. And now I have a different relationship with food, where it's about loving myself and nourishing myself with quality nutrients. And so I can remember that success and I can use that to propel me forward. So I encourage you, if you are feeling the obstacles rise up, that number one, that's the first stage of creating change anyway. The friction, the awkwardness, that's the first experience, the first stage when we are creating change, because it's contrary to our normal patterns. So there is a bit of discomfort in doing things differently. So number one, you're on the right path if you're feeling a level of discomfort. If the level of discomfort is so overwhelming that you feel stuck and less than 80% of the time you're able to practice your new habit, then give yourself permission to look at the choice of behavior that you committed to and reframe it. Switch it up. So like I've talked about before, make the step small and manageable and bite-sized so that you can create change. So if I was waking up at 8 and now I want to wake up at 6, then it would be a huge jump for me to go from 8 a.m. to 6 a.m. waking up every day and just expect that would stick. Instead, I can move the time earlier by 15 minutes or 5 minutes, right? 5 more minutes a day that I would have towards my morning, and I can slowly progress forward. Hey, Ange. So if you feel like the roadblocks are bigger than you, then envision yourself with the bigness, the confidence of an elephant. And so the obstacles will become smaller and you will become bigger. Fill yourself up with Shraddha. Part of filling yourself up with Shraddha is also leaning on the faith and the confidence of your teacher or of those around you that have faith in you. So when you feel your faith dwindling, can I really do this? Is this possible? You can pull on the faith, the belief of your teacher or of others that love and support you. And you can borrow their faith and let that help fuel you towards your goal. And envision meditating on the strengths of an elephant and visualizing this future self that has whatever qualities that your new practice will bring about. Focus on the goal. I don't know if any of you, I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, but when a child is learning to ride a bike, it's the funniest thing. There can be wide open space and like one car or one obstacle, right? And so they're learning how to steer and to ride their bike. And there's a little bit of awkwardness, right? That's what it feels like to be doing something new. There's that awkwardness. And of all the space that they could focus on, what do? They hone into like the one obstacle. They like focus on the car. They're like, don't hit the car, don't hit the car, don't hit the car. And what do? They run directly into the car because what we focus on draws us to it. So if you feel right now like you're overwhelmed or that the obstacles feel bigger, then I guarantee you, hey Aaron, your eyes are set, your gaze is set, your mind is set on the obstacles. So shift your focus. No need to focus on the car. It's there, right? But what about all the wide open space? Set your gaze, set your eyes, set your focus on the space, on the solution, on the faith that you can cultivate through visualization, on the faith that your teacher or your loved ones have in you. And then you'll notice that you start to shift in that direction because that's where you're focused on. So keep your eye on the ball, keep your head in the game, and that means to focus on solution. So please share with me things that come up for you as you practice these things. Be gentle with yourself. I, for the last probably week, really sunk into a low place where I was just riddled with anxiety, the kind of anxiety that feels like it's crawling through your skin. And the first thing that happens for me typically when I go into a state of mind that I feel really down about is self-criticism. Come on, Kelsey, you have all these tools. You shouldn't be feeling this way. Or, somehow self-sabotaging by criticizing what's going on within me. And when I notice myself doing that, I get the opportunity to practice gentleness and loving kindness to myself. And I can affirm that this is all a part of the experience, the highs and the lows, the ebb and the flow. There's wholeness in our range of emotions. There's wholeness in our range of experiences. And just because we have tools, just because we're on a path where our goal is to create more sustainable joy and to be the best version of ourselves, it doesn't mean that we don't have lows. It doesn't mean that we struggle. And so in the struggle of this past week, in the anxiety, in the overwhelm, in the limiting beliefs and the self-criticism, those were all opportunities. And so even in the discomfort, even though my first response was wanting so desperately for these feelings to go away, my practice showed up for me. I've been spending over a decade ingraining these new ways of being inside myself so that when the obstacles arise, I can have hope and confidence and faith that this too shall pass. It's all a part of the journey. It's not an indicator, thanks Aaron, it's not an indicator that I'm not doing the work. It's not a reflection of my value. I am Purusha. I am the light, the unchanging confidence, wisdom, and joy. That consciousness, that's who I am. That's what I am. And these other things are Prakriti. So when my mind is fluctuating, and I can separate who I am and my worth from what experience I'm having. No matter how uncomfortable, no matter how painful, there is space between what I'm experiencing and who I am. So you are not alone. You're not the only one that dips really low. You're not the only one that experiences overwhelming anxiety or fear or pain. And what I do know is when I feel those things, when they overwhelm me, that is Prakriti, that is the form, that is the changing nature of things. And if it's the changing nature of things, then I know it won't last forever. And I can work to influence my experience and bring some ease and some comfort, but also to just accept that that's the week I'm having. And to be authentic and sincere so that people around me can have compassion and can show up for me. So I can say, hey, I'm struggling. This is where I'm at today. And it reminds me that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And as someone who has been working on my mental health for, since adolescence, actively working on bringing some healing for myself, I've noticed that mental health awareness in reality has actually been Mental Illness Awareness Month. When we focus on the obstacles, they expand. So yes, do I struggle with regulating my mood? Do I have a history of diagnosis and medication and all that stuff? Yes. Do I want to identify that that's who I am? Do I want to label myself as a mental illness? Hell no. I want to focus on mental health. So if you are an advocate for mental health, if you want to bring about awareness and take away the stigma and the shame around mental illnesses, then focus on mental health instead of the mental illness, right? I struggle all the time. Like, how much of my story do I share with the public world? How much do I share with my students the reality of my mental health journey? Because I don't want to identify too closely with who I am as being the struggles that I have. So I want to share with you that you're not alone, so you feel that comfort, that peace. But I also want to urge you, if this is important to you, if mental health is important to you, then stop making it Mental Illness Awareness Month and start making it Mental Health Awareness Month. Talk about the things that bring you healing. Talk about the solutions. Talk about the tools. Talk about the community and the camaraderie and the love and the compassion and the support that we can gain and provide for each other, so that we focus on the solution rather than the obstacle. Then we start to embody more and more the confidence, the wisdom, and the joy that is Purusha, that is the unchanging part of us, that is our highest self, our spirit, our soul, whatever language that you want to use. And then those things will expand instead of the obstacles and the challenges and the diagnoses and all of those things getting bigger and bigger relative to us. So I hope that resonates. If you have questions or comments or feedback, please share with me. My intention in opening up my heart and sharing so candidly with you all is because of the power of these tools. And I've said that so many times, but it's really, really the truth, that the reason I share these things is because I need them. I actively practice them on a daily basis because without them I begin to flounder, and with them I thrive. So share with me, ask me questions so that you can help direct me into what is most helpful and impactful in positive ways for you. And if you haven't already had a chance to download my 5-minute, I have a free 5-minute breath practice on my website, KelseyDelaneYoga.com, and you can download that, and you can just have one more tool in your tool belt, 5 minutes of breath awareness to calm anxiety and to bring about some grounding. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, please feel free to head over. Thanks, Nicole. So much love to you. I hope you all have a beautiful Sunday, a wonderful rest of your weekend. From my heart to yours, yogis, so much love. See you next time.